Welcome to Witness Wednesdays here on the Walk Boldly with Jesus podcast. I am your host, Catherine Duggan. However, each Wednesday, I will have a guest give their witness of how God is working in their lives. Hearing how God is working in other people's lives shows us how deeply He cares for each one of us individually. Listening to these experiences will help your faith grow. I am so blessed to be able to share these with you. Let's get started. Our guest speaker today is Cathy K. She is going to talk to us about how she found out about her husband's infidelity and how God helped her navigate through the really difficult situation she now found herself in. She explains the difficult things she went through and how God was there all along, although at times she didn't know He was there. There were times when she felt as though she was asking and He wasn't answering. Even if you haven't been in this exact situation, and I hope many of you haven't, I know we can all relate to a time when we felt like God wasn't there, or we were asking Him for help and we couldn't hear His answers. I'm sure you will all get a lot out of this witness.
This last chapter of my life is one I'm sure plenty of people can relate to. I thought I had my happily ever after on my second try at marriage. I had married a handsome, honest, loving man who loved me, his family, and loved my kids as his own. We made it through 15 years of marriage with 7 blended kids between us, without any cracks in our foundation, or at least I thought so. We weren't perfect by any means, but I was his third wife, and his first 2 marriages hadn't made it 3 years. So I thought we were solid, and so did everyone in our world. Little did I know what was coming. He had been outside cutting grass, and I was inside doing laundry. His phone pinged, and I checked it, expecting it to be one of the kids. It wasn't a big deal to ever look at each other's phones. And with that one text, my life changed forever. It was a woman who I had no idea who she was, telling my husband her dog had just died and she could really use his hugs and kisses and how much she really loved him. I was shattered just like that. Something told me to take a screenshot of that message and hang on to it. When he came in the house, he could tell something was wrong with me as tears streamed down my face, and I confronted him about it, and he claimed she was just a friend from work. And that's when the man that I was head over heels in love with became someone I no longer knew. I asked him why he thought it was okay for his mouth to be on any part of another woman, and he said he would kiss her on her forehead, and she was just a friend. I told him she sounds like way more than a friend if she's saying all of that, and I told him I wasn't okay with any of it, and I wanted him to stop it. He said he would, and I foolishly believed him. I prayed to God to get us through this. We were both believers, so surely He would see us through this. Fast forward 3 weeks. I was at work, and my God-given spidey sense kicked in. My women's intuition was firing on all cylinders, and I felt led to leave work and go home. I pulled into our driveway, and there sat his truck, and it didn't set me off any alarms to me because he would sometimes come home and take a nap on break. However, what did cause concern was the house alarm was set, and he never did that. I walked into the house. It was a split floor plan, and our bedroom was right there, but it was empty. So when I went into the living room and he wasn't there either, just as I was rounding the corner to the other bedrooms, I hear scrambling, and there he was, jumping up naked, trying to slam the door in my face, while a naked woman is diving to the floor, grabbing for her clothes. I lost every ounce of Jesus that was in me at that moment and was ready to cause bodily harm to both of them. I was outraged and hurt. He tells me to let her leave, and he's trying to hand her the keys to our truck while I'm trying to push through him to go after this woman. I said she can walk back to wherever she came from, and if he gave her the keys to our truck, I would report stolen. He becomes forceful with me so she can escape before I can get my hands on her. A lot of ugliness went down for all involved at that time, but I'll spare the details of that. Again, I asked God, how could this have happened, and to help us out of it, but he wasn't answering, or maybe I just wasn't hearing what he was saying. Later that day, my husband is asking me for my forgiveness and begging to stay. I told him I thought maybe if he stayed in another room, it would be okay, but I wasn't ready to talk to him or see him. But the next day, I had expected him to spill it all, or he had no place here any longer. He talked, I listened, and we decided to work on things, and he promised to stop contact with her. Time is going by, but I just couldn't shake the feeling that something was still up. Looking back, that was, again, my God-given senses were heightened. I started searching our phone bill and figured out her phone number easily by how often it showed up and saw that they had been talking and texting for several months and found out she was a married woman with younger children. I discovered I was a really good detective if I had to be. That screenshot I had taken weeks before came back to mind when I found out through Facebook who her husband was, and I sent it to him and I said we had a mutual problem. He eventually got back to me and we started comparing notes, and he had seen a difference in her too, but couldn't figure out what it was. Their divorce is still in the works, but that's not my story to tell. My husband continued to have slip ups, like coming home from work and his wedding ring wasn't on, or I'd see more text from her saying, "Good morning, sexy." God let those things happen, even though it hurt me, just so I could see he was working in the details. We tried counseling, and he gave up after 3 sessions because he felt he was being picked on. I talked to our pastor at church because I didn't feel like my prayers were being answered, and maybe I was praying wrong because I wanted my marriage to work and this man to choose me over his mistress. So, how could God not answer my prayers? I took my vows seriously. I had to have been doing something wrong for him to not be fixing this. My husband began to be physically abusive to me, but yet as much as I loved him, I know, dumb girl, me should have heard and headed for the hills without looking back, but I loved him so much. Surely he would see what he was doing and everyone he was hurting and turn back into the man I knew. We separated in September of 19 so he could think, and he moved into his mom's house. Maybe some space between us would help. I prayed all the more for this to be fixed, but that wasn't God's plans. I joined a women's faith based mentoring group to try and get my head together because I was sinking fast. The daily devotionals felt like they were speaking right into me. He and I still talked daily and saw each other regularly, but he still wasn't coming home to me, and then our time together began to dwindle. I was giving up more and more on myself and blaming myself. What did I do wrong that he wasn't choosing me? Again, my God given spidey sense kicked in and it went into overdrive. A God moment, yeah. And then I would be drawn to ghosts to a specific place that I had no idea where I was driving to or where I'd even end up. And I would find him with her, sometimes in a park, a bar parking lot, or wherever. I just felt drawn to somewhere, and there they'd be. And no, I didn't have a tracker on his car or an app tracking him on his phone. God was taking me somewhere so I could see for myself what he was doing. I'm a Missouri girl, so you have to show me. It was the weirdest thing to just find them like that, just being led, but I was trusting in God to show me his truth because I knew I couldn't trust my husband's words anymore. I became so withdrawn from my life, I didn't get out of the house, didn't hardly eat, had a hard time focusing on anything. I was consumed by thoughts of them, and I was just giving up, and I cried all the time. God was still working, just not how I thought he was supposed to be. When COVID hit, I started working from home full time. I had asked God to remove me from the situation since the marriage was spiraling farther out of control, and I was worried about my mental health at this point. I had nothing keeping me in the area aside from waiting COVID out and my job, because then I would return to the office. I started asking God to show me if He wanted me to leave the area or to make a way for that to happen. My daughter was married and living out of state, and my son was in college 3 hours away. We had no children together, and he had told his family I was the one cheating on him, and they had all turned their back on me, even though I was the mom who had raised his kids. Family ties in that bunch run deep. They wouldn't hear a word I had to say, and they turned their backs on me like they had never known me. I prayed, "Okay, God, show me what you want me to do. I'm yours. I can't do this anymore. I surely can't do this on my own. So please just open the doors you want me to go through, and I'm doing it." I applied for jobs back in my old hometown, and no interviews came, so I thought God was saying, "Stay put in the town you're in." Nope. Then he answered, and my employer made the decision we would remain 100% remote and we could live wherever. He's working. He's really working. My prayers changed from "God, please help me fix my marriage" to "Please change me. Give me the strength to do hard things and to feel worthy again because I am a child of God." My mentoring group was helping me find my worth and my courage again. My mentor is pretty dang amazing. Valentine's Day 2021 rolled around, and my husband and I had actually made plans to spend the day together. He called and said something came up and he couldn't make it. I got brave and said, "No, someone came up, and she was the priority, not me." Again, I had finally had enough, and I was tired of being second in my own marriage behind her. Next thing I know, I'm blurting out, "I'm filing for divorce." And I felt this instant relief, peace at last. He told me I'd never do that or give up on him and leave, and I couldn't make it without him. Mind you, at this point, we'd been separated 18 months, and I hadn't ever been his first choice. Once I made up my mind to do something, or I'm told that I can't do something, stand back, wheels are in motion, and I'm on a mission. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Game on. The next day, I had an appointment with an attorney, filed for divorce. Following day, I met with a realtor to list the house. The next day, the house went under contract, and 30 days later, I was moving across the state with me and my 3 dogs. I just let the husband's head spin since he didn't believe I had finally had enough. Here's how my God works. I didn't know where I was going with everything happening so fast. Everyone else on the planet, you may think you have the best friend in the world, but that privilege is mine, hands down. My best friend and her family welcomed me and my 3 dogs into her home until I could find a place to call my own. God was working overtime for me in that hot mess, but he still wasn't done. I'd walk my dogs every morning, and God and I would have long talks, and I'd pray specific things like, please deliver me to the right church, because I needed a place where I felt at home and would have people to become family to me. I'd been gone from this area for 25 years and knew virtually no one anymore. The housing market was brutal because of COVID, and it was hard to find somewhere to live. God brought me to a town about 30 minutes away from my best friend. I didn't want to be there, and I kept telling God, no, not there. It's too far from anyone I know. I don't know anyone there. But there was this hole in the ground where a home could be built, and I won the bid. I didn't know a soul in this town, but God was showing off again for me because on those morning walks when I'd asked him to bring me to the right church, well, he was answering. That's why I ended up in this town. That's where the church I belonged was. He brought me to that exact church and the family he knew I needed to be in, and I knew it the first time I walked in. That's why I ended up in this little town with the hole in the ground that I didn't want to be in because it was his plans, not mine. And I'm the happiest that I've been in what feels like a really long time. When I closed on the house, there was an error reporting of the assessed taxes, and I had just lost my overtime at my job. So now I'm making less money, and my house payment was higher. So I'm in panic mode, being newly single and trying to afford life on my own. And I asked God, why did this happen? And what are we going to do about it? He's such a loving father. He put in my head to apply for jobs outside my company and to keep trusting him. I really like my company, God. Why are we doing this? Well, because he said it wasn't time yet. Be patient. I've heard him clearly all along to have patience in the process. What he meant was the time's not right for the new job. A few weeks ago, an opening came up within my company, and that's what he wanted me to wait for. It was a job I had wanted before, but the timing was never right. I got the job and a raise, and again, he was working in the details. My latest prayer is that God would bless me with a man who chose me, a man who loves God as much as what I do, and would check all my boxes because I'm being picky and I'm not settling, and God knows the desires of my heart. It's been 3 years now since my world turned upside down, and I've worked super hard at becoming the best version of me again, and I'm ready to dip my toes in the water and cautiously proceed with putting myself back out there to see what God has in store for me next, because somewhere out there, there is the man that God has chosen specifically for me. I feel led now to help other women going through a similar situation. I just have to trust God to work out the details in that one. The moral of my story is that we may feel life isn't working out how we wanted, but he takes us down roads to low places only to bring us out of the valleys and stand us up high on a hill so we can look out and see where we've come from, and that he's walked us through every last detail, and to remind us to always keep our head up, charging forward for more of a big life. I've learned to step out of his way, be patient in the process, have faith to move a mountain, and let God do his thing. I know I'm not finished yet. My life verse appropriately is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathy, for sharing your story. I am glad you are able to look back and see now where God was through it all. Even more than that, I'm glad you were able to know, while you were going through some parts of it, that He was leading you to a better life. It is hard to follow the Lord's plan, especially when we don't know what it is, and when it involves moving away from everything we know. You were very brave to trust in the Lord and to take that leap of faith. I am sure sharing your story will give someone else the courage to follow the Lord's prompting as well. We have all seen God working in our lives. However, we might not all be aware it is God working in our lives. This is why it's so important we start talking about it more. The more we share our experience, the more people will understand how God works and how much He truly loves us. If you would be willing to share any experience you've had of how God has worked or is working in your life, please email me at Catherine@findingtruenorthcoaching.com. And that's CATHERINE at findingtruenorthcoaching.com. Or just click on the link below. It won't take up much of your time, and your story could be just the story that someone needs to hear today. Prayerfully consider sharing. Everyone has a story, and the world needs to hear them. I look forward to spending time with you again tomorrow, and I will have another witness for you next Wednesday. Have a blessed day.